A British film, in this case Searching for Sugar Man, won the Best Documentary Oscar in Los Angeles last week for the second time in 4 years. Meanwhile, a host of others have got close. So is something stirring in the world of British documentary, for so long mainly the preserve of TV, but now apparently competing with the world's best in the cinema. Mike Lerner is a documentary filmmaker and an Oscar nominee to boot, and Heather Kroll is director of DocFest, the Sheffield International Documentary Festival, which is the biggest in Britain and now one of the biggest documentary events in Europe. And I should say, by way of complete transparency, that I sit on the board of DocFest and have done for a number of years. Heather, just to get us started, what was Sugarman about and how did it come to get made?
Searching for Sugar Man is the story of a pretty enigmatic, charismatic musician who, when he was a young man in America, was picked up and recorded. I think they thought they had the next Bob Dylan on their hands. They recorded his album, put it out, and sold about 5 copies, and it was just nothing. He went back to being a builder in Detroit. Little did he know, he had zero knowledge, that it had gone over to South Africa somehow, the record, and become a massive sensation. He was the soundtrack of youth anti-apartheid through the height of the apartheid movement.
So the documentary was the story of how they went and found him.
Exactly, they went and found him. They found him as a builder in Detroit. They brought him to South Africa. He literally thought no one knew his songs in the world, and he sold out to stadiums of tens of thousands. And it's this incredible story. As you watch it, you just get tingles of like, oh my God, this 70-year-old man is singing to people who know every word, and he didn't know that he was bigger than the Beatles.
This was made by a British producer.
It was. We played a part in helping the film find its money, actually, because the early days, the first-time film director applied to be in our marketplace. And what we do in Sheffield is we bring hundreds and hundreds of different documentary funders to the festival, and we try and help them fund ideas.
But okay, we'll come back to that in just a second. Mike, you were Oscar nominated, I think, for Helen back last year. You've got a new film, Smash and Grabs, in the works. How difficult is it to finance these sorts of films?
Well, it is difficult, and the environment changes constantly. So you have sources of funding that last for a few years, and then they fail, and new ones come up. I mean, I do think we're living in a golden age of filmmaking. I mean,
and what's brought that about?
Well, I think it's the perfect storm of. I mean, Britain has always had a very strong documentary tradition, of course, but less success in the sort of theatrical world. But now you can go and make. I think some of Searching for Sugar Man was shot on an iPhone. You can make our film Hell and Back Again was mostly shot on a small, cheap camera. You can now make films very, very cheaply. You can distribute them in all kinds of new ways that, again, were previously unavailable. You don't have to spend £100,000 making a print. You can distribute digitally, and the kinds of places now that are showing films. So everything's coming together, I think, to create a new impetus for this.
So why would you not go with your project, as we all used to by tradition, straight to a TV network? I know you've worked for most of them, and say, right, well, just buy my film, commission my film.
Well, for the kinds of films we're talking about, the kind of slots for them are not so many. So I mean, we would do that, and indeed, of course, the BBC have got a very fine tradition of making great feature documentaries, and as do Channel 4 and others. But they do have less money, so it's not a one-hit solution. So you have to put together a combination of.
Is it the form of these films that TV doesn't like, or are they subjects that TV commissioners just either don't get or don't want?
Well, I wish I knew.
I'm not even sure that they aren't on TV. I think there's a combination.
Well, they end up on TV, don't they?
Yes, that's right. But I think that, as Mike's saying, it's not a one-stop shop for money anymore. There's been a whole shift in financial landscape of how you fund a documentary, and you do need to sew together a tapestry of money from a lot of different sources, and that's quite a complex road to walk. Mike's actually done it quite a few times, but it's one thing that, I mean, as I say, like, not just our festival, but other festivals in the world do what we do, which is we attempt to make that road a bit easier, and we bring all the buyers in the room, and then something like Searching for Sugar Man, which probably never really would have got its money, but it found 4 or 5 different pots of money there.
Is there
same as Mike does.
Is there something about the individual voice and how TV does or doesn't sort of account for it? I mean, again, I think back to my days making documentary. The people like There's Peter Kosminski came out of it, and there's Molly Dineen and
Nick Broomfield,
and
Kim Longinot,
who are real individual voices. Now they
That's
do
right.
this sort of stuff outside of TV, but the TV
I
is
think
where they came
probably
from.
there's a bit of a, as you know, this golden age idea I think is quite true, because I think there's a renaissance of interest in that sort of like the voice of the voice of the filmmaker. I think what's happened internationally is that there's enough interested people to put in a small amount of money together to join it all up. And now what's happening really right now as we speak in Sky, BBC, Channel 4, ITV, like all of the networks are starting to kind of go, maybe we should look back again at that. And I keep on meeting a lot of documentary magazines saying, I can't believe I just had a great meeting about funding a film at you know, of all places, you know, Sky or a slot on Channel 4 that they thought was not really happening anymore. So things are looking good.
Mike, why do you think Britain is doing so well here? Because one thinks of Michael Moore and others, and Al Gore and big American names doing it, and Germans and whatever. Because Britain hasn't really been in this game in quite this way, has it?
Well, no. I mean, as I say, I think previously it was television that bred this great documentary tradition, and now, in a way, I do feel it has moved away from television to some extent. I think
Is that a good thing, do you think?
Well, I mean, to me, and probably, my feeling is that television is more risk averse than it ever was. Most of these great films, you go in and say, we're going to make a film about this guy, and he used to be famous in South Africa, and we don't know really what's going to happen. They would never commission that because they want to know what's going to happen in the end. And very often, the best films, you can never say that. So, they may well join a project once you're at a later stage, but to actually fund these things and to go out on these voyages of discovery, which most great films are, is not really where television is at.
But it's also that getting back to the point that distribution is cheaper now. As you were saying, the digital technology has made distribution so much cheaper. We can actually afford, like, getting documentaries in the cinema is actually quite cheap now compared to what it was with 35mm print. So television isn't the gatekeeper of everything anymore. You can get a film up, and smaller distribution companies around the country will say, well, we're going to launch this in a few cinemas, as well as put it on download that you can pay per download and so on. There's a lot of different ways that you can get.
So do you think then, are there more films being made for the cinema in the UK now?
Yeah, definitely. And documentary, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. There's more documentary titles going out in cinemas in the last 12 months than probably the previous 3 years put together.
And is this the direction, do we think?
I think that these innovative new distribution companies, and there's quite a few of them, but they're making the bigger distribution companies sit up and go, oh, maybe we could do that, okay. And it's setting a trend.
Okay, all right. Heather Kroll, Mike Lerner, many thanks indeed.